We begin tonight with a significant announcement from Washington on the sale of advanced US-made AI chips to China, a major reversal of Washington's national security policy. On Monday, President Trump said his administration had given the green light to Nvidia to sell some of its more powerful AI chips to Beijing. Approval for the H200 AI chip followed months of haggling between tech industry backers who are in favor of a deal and defense hawks who say the sale of these sorts of chips risk giving China a military and economic advantage. The US president announced the deal in a social media post, saying the US government would take a 25% cut of the sales and that Beijing had responded positively. Mr. Trump's argument is that the ban was stifling innovation for Nvidia and the whole industry and was therefore harming the possibility of American jobs. Correspondents say Nvidia now has this enormous Chinese market to sell their top-end chips, and this is a big commercial win for the company. Well, staying in the US, President Trump has announced a $12 billion aid package for American farmers affected by low crop prices and his own trade policies. Most of the money is earmarked for one-time payments to farmers of row crops like corn and soybean. Sorghum and soybean growers have been hit hard by the Trump administration's trade dispute with China. Correspondents say the move is the latest government efforts to shore up a key political constituency hurt by the financial fallout from the president's trade policies. Farm groups and Republican lawmakers have sought the aid in part to support farmers with purchases of seeds, fertilizer, and other expenses for next year's growing season.
We're taking a relatively small portion of that, and we're going to be giving and providing it to the farmers in economic assistance. And we love our farmers, and as you know, the farmers like me, they're the backbone of our country. So we're going to use that money to provide $12 billion in economic assistance to American farmers. $12 billion is a lot of money, Meryl. What do you think? Peanuts for you, though, right? Peanuts.
As the president said, we are very pleased to announce that today we are going to be effectuating an $11 billion bridge payment to our farmers. The money will move by February 28th of 2026. Final thing I'll say is
$12 billion.
Well, we're holding $1 billion back. So today we are announcing $11 billion. We are holding $1 billion back just to ensure that we are covering. So today's announcement covers all of our row crops, but some specialty crops and others that we are still working with to best understand where they are in the farm economy.
Do you know how you settled on this $12 billion or $11 billion plus one more billion dollar figure?
We looked at how they were hurt, to what extent they were hurt. We did a very, steady progression of charts, and we figured out a very exact number, and it was about $12 billion.
Donald Trump. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from New York by Arise Special Correspondent James Blue. Good to see you again, James. It's been a wee while, well, a couple of days. I know you've been flying all over the place, so good to have you back in America there. Let's begin, before we talk about the aid package for the farmers, let's start with that significant announcement from Washington on the sale of advanced US-made AI chips to China. This is a deal that's been brewing for a while. So what's pushed it through now in the midst of this geopolitical tug of war between the US and China?
Charles, it's great to be back with you, back from New York City. I think the biggest issue with the approval to sell the H200 advanced chips made by Nvidia, along with advanced chips made by AMD and Intel, is really the desire and the need to continue to build and to support the growing AI economy in the United States. There is a very large sense that the AI economy may be in a bubble, that it may be overvalued. And so at no point does the administration want to do anything that allows the AI economy to wobble. For the economy to continue to grow, it needs to sell to China. China has been lobbying for this for a while. There had been some hawks within the US government against the sale to China for fears that it would be giving secrets away, giving away too much. And as you know, Charles, it's a real sort of record of China taking US product, taking any foreign product, then sort of analyzing it, replicating it, and then coming up with a cheaper, more cost-efficient version. There is some fear that that might happen here, but overall, the desire was to continue to grow and to build the AI economy in the US and to give these companies a chance to sell their wares overseas. And as one sweetener in the deal, because the U.S. has allowed this, the U.S. government is taking a 25% cut of all of the sort of revenue from these sales to very particular Chinese customers. So it's good for the companies, it's good for China, and it's good for U.S. taxpayers who are going to benefit from those sales.
Well, let's pick up on what you said just a hot second ago, James, about the doubting Thomases. Will it be difficult to convince lawmakers to go along with this deal? Because we've seen some resistance from people in Congress who don't like this move on national security grounds, as you suggested there.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult to block this deal. And I think what's really going to push it is the sort of very fragile state of the AI economy. If you look at sort of the US stock market, if you look at the valuations, so much of it is tied to AI. I think there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be reluctant to sort of do anything that might cause some challenge or actually, slow that down. I think there will be concerns raised, and I think you may see some additional parameters put in. But from the reporting I've been able to do, the people I've been able to talk, both on the Democrat and Republican side, there is a sense that this is going to happen, largely because the Trump White House has declared it so. I also think the sweetener of the fact that they are taking 25% of those profits and putting them back into the U.S. Treasury, that really does direct benefit to the American public. And I think it's going to sail through without much challenge. Well, let's say the challenge is only going to be rhetorical. I don't think this is going to happen, and there will be a challenge in terms of process in slowing this down.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to bang on about it, James, but just getting you to put on your special correspondent hat, which you already have on, let's face it. I mean, would you say that they are right to feel concern about how China might use these very advanced AI chips designed by the US to, for instance, develop AI-enabled military capabilities, which potentially gives Beijing a battlefield advantage over the US?
Yeah, Charles, some of the reporting that I've been able to do suggests that one of the reasons why it is now okay to sell this hardware, these chips to China, is that the next generation of chips that the US has been developing are about to come online. And so China, as you may or may not know, has been able to use the H200 chip, which they were using and buying regularly. This is another Nvidia project. When the H200 came aboard, there was some sense that those should not and could not be sold to China, and they were blocked. Now that they are being sold, there is some sense that a new, higher processing, more super fast chip is in the works, and that chip would be held back. So the other issue is that there's some within the national security environment who believe by giving China these chips, we're going to be able to sort of monitor the development of their military AI infrastructure because they're going to have tools that they haven't had before. I'm not in any way suggesting that they're sort of tracking or monitoring devices within the chips that are being sold, but I am suggesting that by giving your enemy tools that allow them to expand and to develop, the US is hoping to really uncover some of the secrets and some of the ideas that China has been trying to put forward and trying to develop with this technology. What it really does, Charles, is sort of undermine or underline the extent to which China is really dependent on Western technology for its own development. And I think that has placed both the US and these chip makers in a really, really good place.
And just to look at it from every angle, because again, you know, I know you touched on this briefly earlier, but the other argument from those who support selling these chips to China is that beyond sort of pointing to Beijing as the boogeyman here, if the US doesn't play ball and sell these chips to China, China is going to develop its own ecosystem for chip design, especially given that they are already razor's edge behind the US in that technology. I mean, does that argument carry much weight in your assessment? I know you sort of hinted at it earlier.
Yeah, I think that is a very good argument that by supplying China, we get to sort of shut them off and sort of cut them off at the pass. Like I mentioned, there is some sense that the next generation of chip for the US market developed by these US companies is just sort of, months away. Let's give China the super fast version, and then let's have China reveal what they want to do with it. In a way, this could be seen as a strategic effort to try to get your sort of leading enemy, your sort of contentious trade partner, to kind of reveal his or her hand. And so what China will need to do now that they have this chip, sort of show us. And what it also does, Charles, it really cuts those chip developers in China who are trying to catch up. It now sort of makes all of that effort, that sort of wasted effort, because now they're going to be able to get what they really want directly through sales from the US and from these US companies, Nvidia, in addition to AMD and Intel.
And what about Beijing, James? What are you hearing from them about all this? Because all we've seen is a readout from President Trump about what President Xi is saying. Is there any confirmation from China itself? Will they even buy these chips?
No, Charles, it's really interesting. We haven't heard much from the Chinese, either from the official Chinese newspapers or the state publicity service. We really haven't heard much. This has all been sort of a U.S. announcement. And some have suggested that that is A, the Chinese have been caught off guard, B, that the Chinese were planning in some way to make an announcement about their own chip development in the coming days. It was somewhat curious. This sort of just came up on a Monday just before Christmas. And C, that China is really worried that this could be some type of trap. And so, there's some sense that maybe China is sort of holding and sort of analyzing before they decide to really embrace it. However, there is the sense within the chip makers, within the technology companies, that China is going to aggressively take advantage of this new opening and buy the new chip, the H200, that's now available to them.
Well, we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Let's turn to that $12 billion aid package that President Trump has announced to bail out farmers who are hardest hit by his trade policies. I mean, U.S. soybean farmers have been particularly affected by trade disputes with China, which has turned now to South American suppliers, from what I understand, for soybeans as a result of the Trump administration's tariffs. I mean, what's been the reaction of U.S. farmers to this aid package? I understand that even though some have welcomed it. They're still saying that their market's been effectively destroyed by President Trump's tariffs.
Yeah, it's one of those very curious moments where the farmers are actually still quite upset. They would rather have sales versus subsidies. And what really has happened, and it's very interesting that these were announced on the same day, and it really is all about China. Because of U.S. tariffs, China is just buying fewer U.S. crops, and in particular, they're buying fewer soybeans. And if you look at the size of the sort of soybean market, China bought last year is the biggest buyer of this crop, which is last year was 12.64 billion dollars worth of soybeans, and that is still quite down in terms of what the supply was. And so it's really the tariffs that have reduced the Chinese reliance on U.S. soybeans and U.S. farm crops across the board, and the farmers are really quite upset. They would rather sell than to take government handouts. And I should say the funding for the handouts, the $12 billion, are coming directly from tariffs that have been raised. Or that's the suggestion that the Trump administration is suggesting, that they're going to come directly from that. But this is all about Chinese retaliation to the US imposed tariffs, which allowed China to decide to buy fewer US row crops. And as a result, US farmers are hurting. This is a direct result of President Trump's tariff policy.
And of course, President Trump was warned at the outset that these tariffs are going to come back and sort of bite Americans themselves, that it's not just going to be aimed at other countries, that it's going to hurt American people and, of course, the farmers. And farmers are, of course, a key political constituency for the Republican Party, and their backing helps Donald Trump secure a second term. I mean, are these measures announced by the president enough to keep them on side, even as his tariffs are continuing to hurt them with, as you said, billions of dollars in lost sales?
Yeah, Charles, I think it's a real sort of particular mix, because in addition to the lost sales due to tariffs, the prices in this country that President Trump said he was going to reduce immediately have not come down. So you have a large group of his constituents who are making less money, who are still having to pay high prices for groceries, and who are really sort of beginning to understand and really suffer under Trump policy. One of the things that you're seeing, which I think is very indicative of how serious the Trump administration is taking this issue, he is out on the road today, headed to Pennsylvania for one of his famous rallies, which were very big during the campaign season, but have not been a feature of the second term. He's gone to a lot of football games, he's going to other sporting events, but he hasn't actually had a rally. And there's some sense that between now and the midterms in next November, that he's going to get on the road and really get out and sell his policies. One of the things that President Trump has, pretty much better than any politician I've been able to see and to witness, is his ability to connect very viscerally with those who support him. And by going out and energizing that group, there's some sense that he can sort of work his magic and allow them to sort of continue to suffer under the tariffs, suffer under the rising prices. But because he's going to go out and feel their pain and support them, there's some sense that they will come back and rally around him and hopefully, in his mind, keep the Congress, keep the U.S. House in Republican hands.
James, we're wiser for your analysis. Thank you very much indeed. James Blue is Arai's special correspondent. He was talking to me on the line there from New York City.